The sixth richest person in the entire world, Warren Buffett, said the one easy way to become worth 50% more than you are now, at least, meaning at least 50% more valuable than you are now, is to hone your communication skills. And so if you truly want to tap into more of your greatest potential, you want to become at least 50% more valuable than you are right now, you must make it a priority to hone, develop, and master communication skills. And so in the next 30 seconds, I'm going to give you 5 powerful books to help you to unleash your greatest potential as a communicator so you can thrive and catapult yourself to new levels of success, achievement, and flourishing in every and any area of your life. So I'm going to give you the 5 books, and then I'm going to dive into each one and give you one major powerful takeaway, idea, lesson, or insight from each book so that you can take them and start implementing them in your life now. The first book that I'm going to list is Mirroring People by Marco Iacoboni. Book 2, Don't Shoot the Dog by Karen Pryor. Book 3, The Structure of Magic, Part 1 by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. Book 4, Attract Your Potential by J.J. Peller. Yeah, that's me. Book 5, a classic in the art of actually how to win friends and influence people, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. So let's start with mirroring people, the science of empathy and how we connect with others. The major takeaway or idea that I want you to get from this book is that we are wired as humans to feel empathy for other people, to feel connected with other humans. You see, we have something in our brain called mirror neurons, and if you're not familiar with them, basically, they're neurons in our brain that fire when we see someone doing a very simple, straightforward act that we are familiar with. Like if I were to reach for a pen on my desk or reach for a book or reach for a cup of water, the neurons, the mirror neurons in your brain, if we're sitting there together, or even if you're watching on video, would fire as if you were reaching for that marker or that book or that water or beverage, even if you didn't actually reach for it. So basically, it's a lower intensity firing of those same neurons in your brain as if you were to actually do the action. So what that tells us, and what he reveals in this book, Mirroring People, is that when we do something, other people feel it. And when other people do something, we feel it. So why does this matter for our ability to be powerful and effective communicators? It matters because if we realize that everything we do, other people feel, then we've got to get really intentional about the things that we do, and the facial expressions that we make, and the energy that we show up with. Because it's whether it's these simple movements that people feel because of the mirror neurons in our brains, or it's the energy or a tonality of voice, people feel it. And whatever people feel, they associate with you. And so the question becomes, what do you want people to feel when they think about you? So as an example, if you show up and you're around someone and you're uplifted and positive and inspired and excited, and you show up with this great energy that comes through in your body language, in your facial expression, people are going to feel that energy, that emotion from you. They literally are wired to feel it. And so the next time they're thinking about you, they're going to be reminded of how they felt when they were around you. So all of this to say, emotions, energy, it's all contagious. When you show up with a certain energy, especially if it's a powerful energy, other people will feel that energy, that emotion from you directly. And so what that means is we as humans have the ability to communicate emotions even without saying anything. And in fact, for the vast majority of the way people feel with us, it comes because of what they see in us, not just the words that they hear. In fact, there's an amazing study from the 1960s by Dr. Morabian. If you're not familiar with it, it's a really important one to understand. It's a really important study to understand, so I'm going to diagram it for you really quickly, and then I'll get into the other 4 books. So Dr. Morabian did this study where he wanted to find out what is it that actually plays the most important role in communicating emotions from one person to the next. And so in the 1960s, he did this study at UCLA to realize that there are 3 different major components to communicating feelings from one person to the next. And so he looked at these 3 different components, and one is your words. If I could write, that'd be great. Words. The next is your voice tonality. And the third is your physiology, big word for body language, but mostly it's around facial expressions. Facial expressions, as I write in a downward slant there. But he broke these down, and he wanted to find out what weighting does each of these have in someone's ability to communicate feelings and emotions from one person to the next. So do you have a guess, or do you know, if you're familiar with this study, what words play, the role that words play in our ability, a human's ability to communicate feelings from one person to the next? Do you know the answer? Take a quick guess, and then I'm going to give it to you, which is, wow, that's a great 7. That's supposed to be a 7 up there. 7%. 7%. Tonality, or the quality of your voice, the tone, the intensity, the volume, all those different qualities of your voice that come through, that people literally feel the energy of, or they hear in their ears. Obviously, it's tonality. 38%. And then if you're keeping track and doing the math at home, that means that your facial expressions, physiology, make up 55%. And so I very geniusly report and call these two together, your tonality and your physiology, your facial expressions, which are the two things that have nothing to do with words, your 93%. Get it? Because these two add up to 93%. And the reason this is important to understand is your ability to communicate feelings to another human, or emotions, however you want to think of it, is all about your voice tonality and your facial expressions, your physiology, how you move your body, how you use your face. But the question becomes, as a communicator, how often are you actually focused on your tonality and your physiology and your facial expressions, and how much are you actually focused on your words? I'm not saying words don't matter, because words can get someone to want to punch you in the face or absolutely fall in love with you. I've heard it said recently from an expert in communication that our tonality of voice actually communicates 5 times more information than our words. I guess that makes sense, right? Like 7 times 5 is 35, so it's actually more than 5 times. More than 5 times. It's interesting. I heard him say that, and then I was like, oh, he's probably referencing this study. Yes, your tonality communicates 5 times more information than your words when it comes to communicating a message message of feelings and emotions from one person to the next. So here's what I'm trying to give you. You've got to get really understanding of this concept that when you're around people, they feel you. They feel your energy. They feel your emotions. A lot of it comes through your tonality and your physiology, or your facial expressions. So as a communicator, how much are you using your face to communicate a message to another person? I'll give you one powerful strategy in a second that you can use to be even better at that. Book number 2, Don't Shoot the Dog by Karen Pryor. This is a great book about the power of positive reinforcement, because if you're at all familiar with animal training, which is where Karen Pryor is an expert, she's an expert around the world with training animals, all different kinds of animals. As you read the book, she gets into dolphins and whales and dogs and donkeys. I mean, just all kinds of crazy animals that she's training. Turtles, maybe even? I don't know for sure. Penguins? I don't know. Lots of crazy animals. But the point is, we are all, not just animals, like human animals, we are reinforced by what other people say and do and how they interact with us. So the question you have to be asking yourself is, what am I reinforcing? What am I training in another person? What I mean by that is, as an example, if someone comes up to you and they want to start a conversation, a coworker, personal relationship, whatever, they start a conversation with you, and you immediately get angry or tense, or you're like, I'm busy, or I don't have time for this, or what are you doing? And you're short with them, and you're abrasive. They're going to be trained that you don't make them feel good when they come around you. Or they're going to be trained that anytime they want to bring up a really important topic, you get angry and intense. And it might not be the thing you want to be training in them, but it's the thing that's actually reinforced by the brain of that person. And so you've always constantly got to be asking yourself, what am I actually reinforcing in this person with the way that I'm communicating, with what I'm saying, with my facial expressions, with my tonality, with my words, with my energy that I exude? We're constantly, always training and reinforcing behavior in the people around us. But for most of us, we're not intentional about how or what specifically we're reinforcing. We just go at the whims of whatever's happening, which takes me to the third book, The Structure of Magic by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. And these guys were the co-creators of something called NLP, or Neuro Linguistic Programming, back in the 80s, 70s, 80s. I think it was maybe even the 60s that they started doing this research on how to change human behavior, how to get people to make powerful, positive changes in their life. And it's just a form of communication. But this is one of their, this is one of their very first books on human communication. And neurolinguistic programming is basically neuro, brain, linguistic, language. Programming is like how you get wired through language and physiology in our brains. And one thing that I want to point out was on page 37. On page 37, they say, human language, listen to this, human language is a way of representing the world. Human language is a way of representing the world. The reason this matters for communication is every time you are listening to another person, you are literally hearing through that person's language how he sees the world. You're hearing that person's model of the world, as they call it. What's your world view? Literally, your blueprint of how you see everything in the world comes through in your language. And for many people, for way too many people, language limits us. For way too many people, language limits us. And what I mean by that is we use language that restricts our model of what's possible in the world. And the goal of NLP is to actually enrich people's model or world view. And when you enrich someone's view or model of how the world actually works, you help that person to see more possibilities. And so as a communicator, one of your jobs is to, number one, listen so that you can hear someone's vision or view and model of the world. Because once you can understand someone's model of how they see the world, you are in a way better position to actually communicate effectively with that person, whether you want to persuade that person or get that person to like you or be on your team or buy from you or just be a friend. You've got to start by listening so that you can understand and grasp someone's model of the world. Because then the next thing you can do, once you understand someone's model of the world, and they talk about this on page 45, which is you absolutely have to challenge someone's model of the world. Not in a mean, degrading, demeaning way, but in a way that helps that person to open themselves up to greater possibilities. So if you as a communicator can do your best to help someone expand and enrich their model of the world, then you've absolutely done your job in helping that person have a chance at creating change in your life, in that person's life. Because as soon as someone has a more enriched view of the world, that person has a greater chance of choices, of like, what could I do here? But most people are limited because they say things like, it's not possible, or that never works out for me, or I never get good breaks. And so we don't see the possibilities in front of us because of our limiting language, which leads me to book number 4, Attract Your Potential. Yes, this one's by me, but I wrote it because I believe it's got some great ideas in it. And the one that I specifically want to share with you is just a big, bold quote on page 181 right here that says, "The paradox of true powerful magnetism is that it is strengthened by being less focused on yourself." One more time for the people in the back. The paradox of true powerful magnetism, I'll tell you in a second why that's important, is that it is strengthened by being less focused on yourself. And what I mean with that quote is that if you want to be a magnetic person, which you should want to be as a communicator, because the purpose of mastering your ability to communicate is to persuade or attract people to join your team or to become a client or to want to help your cause or mission or whatever it is. When you can become a magnetic person, then you will draw and attract more of the right people to you, which will open up more of the best opportunities. And if you want to truly be magnetic and powerful with your magnetism as a person, as a leader, as a persuader, as a communicator, as whatever it is you want to be doing in the world, you must find a way to be focused more on other people than on yourself. And one great way to do that is to listen, deeply listen with the intent to actually show the person that that person is seen and that person is heard by you. Do you know how many people are starving to feel seen and heard in this world? So many people. Even the people that you might look at and feel like, well, that person's just achieving at the highest levels and people love that person. That person is probably starving for the ability to feel seen and heard by other people in a true, genuine, deep, authentic way. And if you can be a person that helps another human to feel seen and heard, meaning you are more focused on that person than you are on yourself, you will help that person feel way more connected with you. You will become a powerful communicator, because as they say, people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. And you show people how much you care when you show people that you are there to listen with the intent to help that person feel seen and heard. And the final book is a tried and true classic, but let me remind you of the simple things, because as one of my favorite quotes says by Samuel Johnson, an author from the 1700s, people need to be reminded more often than they need to be instructed. And here's a really simple thing that you could be reminded of today that could absolutely change everything, because from the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie helps you to figure out how to be someone that succeeds at the highest level by winning with people. And I want to share with you, as I alluded to earlier, principle 2 in this book on page 74, at least in the edition that I have, is smile. Let's tie this back into literally everything that we've covered so far, because that might sound like a really simple thing, but if you're not doing it consistently, you're not doing it intentionally, meaning smiling, you are losing out on a huge, powerful tool that you could be using to become a more powerful, persuasive, magnetic, influential communicator in anything and everything that you do. Marrying people, number one, when you smile, people can't help but feel that smile. And they might even smile themselves. Have you ever tested this out? Like maybe you just smiled right there. Well, I had that big smile on my face. But if you didn't, have you ever tested this out in person? When you walk by, someone just throw up a big smile and see what they do. Most people cannot help but smile because we are wired as humans to feel the feelings of other people, and our mirror neurons, in that case, the mirror neurons in your brain, when I smile, they fire, which is just a lighter level of activity than if you were to actually smile. But because there's that light activity going on, you might actually be influenced to actually smile. And if you smile, how are you going to feel? Better or worse than you were before you were smiling? Most people are going to feel, say it with me, better. Better when you smile. People feel better when they smile. And if you smile, you can help another person feel better. Let's tie it back to, how do you make people feel? Hopefully better. What are you training people to do? Let's tie it to the next book. What are you training people to do? To feel good around you, to feel better around you, to feel happy and joyful and enlivened around you? Good. Smile when you're around people. They will feel better, and they will associate you with the positive reinforcement of good and better and happy and joyful feelings if you're smiling around them. And then the other thing is the structure of magic. You actually can break through, help someone to break through when they smile. Because most people get in this stuck state, and they're in this energy that's a downward spiral, and they're tight, and they're so enclosed that they don't open themselves up to possibilities. But if you smile, you may have interrupted someone's pattern of feeling bad or depressed or sad or upset or frustrated enough that they might listen to something that could actually enrich their worldview, in which you can help challenge them to expand their minds about what's possible. And by the way, if you want to be a magnetic person, you got to smile. Have you ever called someone a magnetic person who didn't smile consistently? Probably not. Most people that we see as magnetic, that we want to be around because they're positive and uplifted and hopeful and inspired and all the things, they often smile way more often than the majority of the people that you're around, because they're joyful and they're happy and they're enthusiastic. And you can feel it. It is authentic. They genuinely are in love with life. And that, my friend, is exactly why, if you want to succeed at higher levels, if you want to, as Mr. Warren Buffett, the sixth richest man in the world, said, become worth at least 50% more than you are now, you got to work on your communication skills. And hopefully these 5 books have inspired you, empowered you, and given you some nuggets of ideas that you can start to use today to improve your communication skills, to accelerate your success, and to tap into your greatest potential.